All right, welcome. We're back on the couch with Woody, and today I've got the pleasure of introducing a good friend of mine for many years, and he's one of the most established musical figures in the Australian story. Without further ado, Mr. Dave Rogerson.
Man.
How are you, man?
Hey, how different is this?
Yeah.
You're interviewing me. I've normally got you where I am
That's
talking
right.
to you.
That's right, mate. We're on deck here at Men on Music.
Yep.
And thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
You jumped at it straight away, and I really appreciate it, mate. We're trying to give a cross-section of stories from not only the musician's perspective, but also the people involved in music. And it's safe to say you've made music your life, haven't you?
Very much, yeah. To quote Marsha Hines, music is my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much.
So let's go back to the formidable years of when you were a young fella.
Yep.
When music grabbed you first, was it part of your family, or was your working life as a teenager? How did that all evolve for you?
Well, it's like, where do I start? How long's a piece of string? Our family had always been quite musical. My dad started the AWA radio network, the easy listening format that came to Australia, 2CH in 1973. But prior to that, he'd worked at TUE with, for people in Sydney whose parents may be watching, Gary O'Callaghan, Bob Rogers, Ward Austin, John Laws. So there was always radio in our house. There was always music. But Dad used to bring home albums, and we would have people like Perry Como, Nat King Cole. Dad really liked Nat King Cole. Yeah. He liked Andy Williams. He liked Herb Alpert, big Herb Alpert fan. So there was always music playing of some sort in our house. And I got to meet some artists along the way. The Deltones knew Pee Wee quite well, that great big deep voice, and the whole thing just fascinated me. So I had a toy piano when I was a kid. I always wanted to play drums, and that's really my forte. I studied it at Endeavour High School, like not that far from here, before it was a sports high school. I appeared in a couple of stage shows. I played Fagin in Oliver. Yep. I still remember all the lines. I could go back on tomorrow and do that. I learnt piano while I was there at Endeavour. I had a great teacher in Jack Wyatt, who's passed away. Mr. White, as he was then, was a member of Mick Fowler's Fowl House 5 plus 1, and Jack was the plus 1.
All right.
He came in from America. They already had a band, and so he was there doing, teaching and so on. So, Endeavour was really good. We did a lot of stage shows. We had no hall, so we would use Port Hacking High School and the auditorium there. And it was fun. We did everything. We made the sets out of cardboard boxes. We made the sound room using egg cartons. Billy Baker did the lights. Look, we just had a fabulous, absolute fabulous time. And I guess it was deeply ingrained in me. I always had wanted to be on the radio and or a musician. So I was the young kid who would crawl behind the speaker in the radio and pretend I was on the air.
Right.
I was very good at calling horse races. No, our family was not into gambling, and particularly my mum had had a bad experience through her very early life, and gambling had quite severely impacted her family. So we didn't play cards. We didn't. Horse racing was on, but I could call horse races, and I remember distinctly. And my mum, who's still alive today at 92, says there's two things I remember you told me you wanted to do when you were young. You either wanted to be on the radio and play music or be a dunny man. Now, the dunny man was the guy who used to come and take the night carts out, tip what was ever in the bucket out.
Wow.
I'm glad, because there's no dunny men anymore, so I would have been without a job. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Yeah, and I've just, my story is just, I'm blessed. I live in the house that the music built, and I'm very, very fortunate for that.
That's great. So when was your first professional gig? I mean, were you playing in bands when you were younger, or was it straight into some early days in radio? Was it through your dad's contact? Or?
No, my dad was really interesting. A man I totally admire, and I'm writing a book about him and his life at the moment. And the more I find out about him, the more I'm amazed. Not because he's just my dad, it's just that he's just an amazing man. His influence on particularly easy listening music in Australia with artists like, he worked with Tommy Tico, he worked with Jan Adele. He was a very good friend of John Farnham's, because when John was just starting out doing Sadie the cleaning lady. So the music, I think, for me had always been there. But Dad would say, I want you to make this on your own. I'm not here to give you a leg up.
Right.
Okay. Yep. So at no time did I ever go to Dad and say, look, I can't find a job. He was very positive in encouraging me and my sister, that he wanted us to learn how to stand up for ourselves. But I guess my first gigs were probably at school. I took to the drums really quickly. I don't know why, I just love them. I know I'm probably one of the few musicians, except those that work with you, can actually read sheet music.
Right, yeah.
But if you said go to bar 6 and I want you to drop the D and then we're going to go to F sharp, today, it'd take me a while to get all that, but I'd understand what you were saying.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I wrote music. I wrote a couple of songs. I've been fortunate in the last couple of years. I've won a couple of the Australian Association of Songwriters Awards, for particularly in areas of country music.
Yep.
But my very first gig out of school, because I couldn't get a job in radio in Sydney where I wanted to be, because people thought I was still living at home. I would go home and tell my dad all the things that I was doing at this radio station, and he'd tell me everything he was doing, and then there'd be collusion. So I got a job at J.C. Williamson's Theatres. Now, for those who may not be aware, J.C. Williamson's are and were a big theatre company. They probably owned the publishing rights to the biggest shows, stage shows you could ever think, to go and purchase the songs and the sheet music to. So I looked after things like Showboat and Annie, Stephen Sondheim's music, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, I'm immersed in it. I worked with Victor Willis, who would then go on to be with the Village People. Yeah. I worked, I was just very formative. Derek Nimmo, who was an English comedian. I worked with Ken Brodziak. People may not know who Ken is, but he was the guy who signed the contract to bring the Beatles to Australia 1 year before they were really famous.
Of course, yeah.
And Ken Brodziak would just say to, oh, boy, I want you to work with me, just watch what I do, okay? And I did. So that's where it all started. And then I was fortunate. J.C. Williamson's had started a production company where they were doing tours. So I started to work with the Average White Band. I went on the road with the Eagles before the Eagles were really well known, because they toured Australia. We had the Great Moscow Circus. And, you know, so I got quite a expose, if you like, of life on the road.
And showbiz.
And show business, what to do at night at 2 a.m, early hours in the morning with a band. The girls that would come in, never no hanky-panky on my behalf, but boy, there was a lot of people signing autographs at many hours of the day, as I was told.
The old story.
But it was just
different era,
and
time.
I never thought anything of it in as much as, wow, this is amazing. These people, they were just people, Craig. They were just musicians, and I mean that in a nice way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they're angry, they eat, they sleep, they hop on a bus, we go places, and I think it gave me a fantastic grounding for where I am today. You know?
Right. So when did I mean, you spent many years in radio. That was more of a hands-on, almost like an A&R role in that first early. I actually look at it as brand managers. For everyone who don't know, it's artists and
Art and repertoire.
Which is what they say nowadays, but brand managers.
Well, in 1975, 76, 77 and 78, those 4 years were very formative for me in music radio. It's very rare for most people to get into radio and work it in a capital city. I worked at 2UW in Sydney. Yep. It was a big station. We had Malcolm T. Elliott, we had John Laws, my good buddy Dave Whitcomb, who I produced the afternoon show for, Ward Austin, Holger Brockman. These were big names in Sydney, and we're up against 2SM, which was Ian McRae. This was heady times for music radio. But A&R, as you just mentioned there, was not uncommon for me as a producer. And by producer, that means you're helping to get artist interviews, you're helping the on-air person with scripts and so on. So you're actually helping the show do what it did. And Dave Whitcomb and I had 2 or 3 very successful years on afternoons at 2UW, which is now KISS. But the thing I remember is A&R, I'd get calls from the record reps and say, hey Dave, tonight we're going to, wherever it might be, we're going to the Down Under Club, or we're going to Soup Plus, which was a big jazz.
I remember that. That was around even when I was in the early days. I remember Soup Plus.
Yeah, so we'd go there. We'd go to, look, there was a bunch of places. There was one out at Parramatta whose name escapes me. We would go to the Hordern Pavilion, sort of, but we'd go to smaller clubs and they'd say, we're thinking of signing this person, or we've been told about this band, they're not here. Sorry, they don't know we're coming, but they'll be here.
Check them out.
I want to check them out. And that's what an artist and repertoire was about.
Used to do, yeah.
The labels were going out looking for artists they could sign to their repertoire. And so I got to meet Mark Holden, Marsha, I'm talking about some time back, Mark Holden, Marsha Hines, David Essex, Nusha Fox, worst interview I ever had to do. All these people that were coming onto the scene at the 70s, Leo Sayer, Mark Hunter, who I remember, I'm a tall guy, I'm 6'2", I'm about your height. Mark Hunter towered above me. Every time he came in, there was a different beautiful woman on his arm. So it was fantastic, and I think that's what, again, that gave me the grounding through A&R to understand how to not necessarily spot talent, but understand where the creative levels are.
Right.
And people would say to me, here I am at about 18, 19, 20, people say, so do you think we should sign them? What do you think about that? I'm going, man, look, I'm not their destiny.
Well, you kind of were in a way. I mean, I'm sure they'd speak fondly of those opportunities that you probably opened the door, because I mean, I know a lot of record companies, there's even a website that when I was releasing some music recently, it was saying, this is a youth projected website that's all about independent musicians, and it's probably run by a major. Who knows? I don't know. But what I'm saying is that they're actually looking at their target audience, which is that 13-year-old to 20 or 18-year-old that have very distinct tastes. They're very astute. They're very passionate about their artist because it's their first real big thing. I mean, like Swifty's the ultimate example.
Well, I've done some work with her and Frank Bell at 13 Records, and she is the ultimate, to be honest with you. I think Taylor got she gets the award for 10, 15 years ago. She came to CMC Rocks, the Snowies.
Yep.
Now, the Country Music Channel, as it was at that time, was putting on small country music festivals down at Thredbo, at Dinner Plain or whatever it was called. And she turns up as a 18, 19-year-old country music artist. And you looked and saw then this young lady gets how to put on a show. Right. And I remember having a conversation with another good friend of mine, Adam Harvey, saying, this lady, there's something about her, don't ask me what it is, but there's a lot that we're yet to see of her. Yeah. And she shared her music with her fan base. She knew how to use social media before social media really got traction. Yeah. And she would send out film clips. Sorry, I take that back. She would send out the songs, then clips of the songs, maybe a film clip. She might send out photos of her cats because she loves cats and so on. And she just understood how to engage. While we've got other people with great respect saying, radio's not playing my songs, it's radio this and that. I kept saying to them, yeah, but radio isn't your marketing company. You're in charge of your own marketing.
Yeah,
You
that's
need to
right.
get your music on the air. You know, Harvey Norman doesn't get told you've got to sell so many white fridge doors, grey fridge doors, blue ones. They decide what the public wants. You need to make sure you're meeting that need.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's what she did.
Well, that's one thing that it can be quite brutal, the music industry, and you've probably seen that side as well.
Yes.
Can you share any stories where you've come across those artists, or even this is to support those ones out there who are really thinking of taking it on as a job. I've written a song which is the first song on my new album, which you haven't heard yet. It's called "You Got to Lose Before You Can Win."
True.
And
You're not talking about the Bulldogs now, are you?
no. Well, actually,
As a St George fan, I can relate to that.
that's funny you say that, because I'm thinking of pitching it to them, because I think it's quite an anthem, and it's a positive spin on the fact that you got to take them. If you're not prepared to take the knocks, you're probably in the wrong game.
I agree.
Is there anything that you've come across where you've given us the ultimate? You don't have to mention names now, obviously, but like, is there any where you've just gone, this is the wrong approach? You've got to. And what was something that's happened where you just got, this person's got all the talent in the world but no business sense? Or
It's funny. I'm going to answer that, and please keep me on track. I'm going to answer that by what we do at the Australian Institute of Music, which is where I'm a lecturer, facilitator, etc., and mentor. And one of the things I try to help my students understand is that you can have the best song out. You know, it's the best mousetrap. Not everyone wants to buy it, okay, or like it. So do take direction and listen to what people around you are saying. And understanding how to manage yourself is really important. Without getting too deep into it, someone who studied psychology, creative people are right brain thinkers. Everything happens over here. Our creativity, our songwriting ability, the way we hear music and so on happens in this hemisphere of the brain. It's the rational side of the brain over here where all the accountants work, because 2 and 2 has to equal 4. In music, 2 and 2 doesn't equal 4. Okay? You can write a piece of music and you can change the cadence, you can have the coda at the front, the back, whatever. That's what I really like about music. And understanding, once you've developed those songs and you feel as though you're starting to get traction, understand how to manage yourself. Okay? And when we talk about marketing, sometimes you need to get 10 no's before you get a yes.
that's right.
And your song title is very appropriate. Okay, it's saying, you know, Kate Bush did a song called "Don't Give Up." If you listen to the lyrics of that, it's a beautiful, beautiful ballad. And basically, she's saying in her life, it took a long time before she could get established. And I guess as a mentor, not only just a teacher, as students come to me, I say, keep trying, keep asking people, get people to help you understand what it is. You aren't the fountain of knowledge. Very rarely has the sky opened up, the same with me, and dropped us on through the clouds and go, here's the instant expert. Okay? I could give you a story against that though. I was very privileged to work with the guys at InXS. And I count Tim Farriss, guitarist, as one of my great friends. Fantastic. They just called me one day and said, "Hey, we don't have a lead singer anymore." And it's like, this is a band, a bit like the Doors when they lost Jimmy Morrison. What do you do now? I mean, Manzarek's a great, can play fantastic, Riders on the Storm and all that kind of stuff. There's no one there to sing it. So what do? Become an instrumental band? Anyway, they, along with Chris Murphy, the dearly departed Chris Murphy, who was their manager, they said, we want to do something to continue to raise the profile and keep that name out there of InXS, because with Michael Hutchence gone, we're in despair. What do we do? You know? And Chris, a great manager. That guy could have sold ice to Eskimos. He's just fantastic. So anyway, we came up with a concept, the InXS Platinum Series, which after we did some research, we found that there were consumers who had all the various albums that all had the hits scattered across them, but there was no one place where all of the platinum songs, now by platinum I'm meaning million sales. Today you can get platinum without having a million sales. But I'm talking the big stuff, the Wembley Stadium stuff they did with Eurythmics. All of the stuff that they've done. They did the one of the big charity functions. They opened it at Wembley, flew all the way around the world and finished it off in Australia. So we've got all that together. We've put the Platinum series together, and this thing goes off like hotcakes. And we talked about marketing. It was doing so well, we needed stage 2 and 3. So we said, okay, what if we could get all the live footage that's not been released before of the guys singing these platinum songs? So we got all that back, and then we had another limited edition. So Chris was just amazing at like this. And they're saying to me, what else can we do? And I said, let's do a radio series, not dissimilar to what we're doing here. This was before the internet was digitally as an environment where you'd put vision out and so on. It was basically podcasts and so on. So we did that. And they're asking me, and I'm going, guys, who am I to tell the greatest songwriters, probably of the contemporary 80 period, what to do? What do you think of this song? No, you're asking the wrong person. You know, how do you tell Picasso to go and change 2 strokes on a picture? Or how do you tell Lennon and McCartney, hey Paul, that left hand on the bass guitar, I wouldn't hold it. There are just some people you can't. You can't tell what to do. So I'm telling you the 2 sides of the story. There are some that are established. They seek your input because they value you for what you bring to the table to them. There are others who need the valued input because they're unsure of the direction they may want to go in, or they ain't going in the right way. Long answer to your short question.
No, that's fine. It's good. It's really great because the people who do watch this are often quite artists as well, and we're all exactly right. We can always fall into that method or ideology of just being the artist, the consummate artist, without that business acumen or that kind of realising that it is a product and it is something that needs to be connected with the fans on an emotional and an intellectual basis. And then if you can do that genuinely, you can build something.
And it's about timing. You know that as well. You know that with Bondi Smile.
Well,
you talked
that's a great
about.
segue because I know that's where I first met you, and you were the is it CEO of?
I was head of content, director of content for Grant Broadcasters, who had in 75 markets around Australia with about 120 radio stations, plus the Kicks.
Plus the Kicks brand.
Kicks Country Network, which I think at the time we were probably rebranding because Kicks, the hottest country. We had the Kicks Network, the Hot Country Network, and we were combining them. So it became Kicks, the hottest country.
Because they've just ticked over, and shout out to Justin, they've just ticked over 21 years.
I know.
So it's 21 years young. How did that landscape evolve? And you saw it. I mean, even I could still remember the conversation you had to me when you got Bondi Smile, and I still remember I was up at Kingscliff on a family vacation. Without my kids, weren't born then. It was just me and Hayley, and we were sitting in Kingscliff and we were listening to the app. I think they had an app by that time.
In fact, we're one of the first. Yes, we had apps. We're one of the first stations to have it, and we were streaming as well.
You were streaming because
we were streaming, and then we went to the app.
And this, I still remember this to the day I die because this is like a pivotal moment to me. Okay, now I'm turning a corner because I pressed on, and here's Craig Wood's latest song, Bondi Smile. She had a bun, and it come on, and going, hey, look at this, and we were just laughing, and that for an independent artist who put his heart and soul and all his time and effort in music since he was 16, to get that at 30 years old, that was, for me, was a moment that I thought, okay, now I can...
You got some traction going on here.
And we still play that song at every gig. I still get requested that song. People still buy the T-shirt. It's my Sadie, the cleaning lady. It really is. Which
if the shoe fits, wear it, Craig.
And I love it. I love it. I love the fact that it's reached, and the fact that it talks about Bondi in Queensland. So it's very...
It's Australiana.
It's Australiana. But that was how I got in contact. That's when you were with Kicks, and I remember you saying to me, I was having this meeting with my man, with the board, and I was saying we've got to get out there and look at all these independent artists who are doing great work, or something to that effect.
It was, yeah.
Has that always been a part of your DNA to help out the little guy? Because we need more of it in the industry. And I mean, there's a lot of power at the top end, but the top end's well catered for. It's still these people at the middle and the bottom that need that nurturing. Has that been a part of your philosophy? Or just
I think so, because, you know, I never set my eyes out to be, or my mind to be what I am today, okay, without sounding like an egotist. Mine's come through referrals, people I know, and so on. So I never had advertising saying, come to me because I'll be helping you get your song to number one, or get on stage and I'll tell you.
All the things you need to do.
Life just evolved, and people came to me through my life experience, which and through my dad, I just am so privileged to have had that association with. I think I would have done it anyway, even if, because my dad started out as an electrician, and at 6'2", 3 weeks into it, decided that being an apprentice crawling under a house trying to run wires is not great, let alone being in the roof on a hot day. And then he actually made radios on the AWA production line and blah, blah, blah. So I think somehow the world was meant to collide, and we shared whatever it is, that instant karma. But I always felt that Australia, this little sort of island that floats along in the South Pacific, and no one can leave, because if we do, it'll float away, because it's a big piece of land and we all need to be here. Yeah. And we had so much great talent, and I was fortunate to see in my youth at Endeavour High School, and that the hall is still there at Tarrant Point, we got to see the very early artists like this band called Inks. And I think, we used to get handouts at the bus stop, and I go, who the heck is Inks? Oh, that's In Excess. And no one, like,
everyone was saying
Inks, Sherbet, the La-Di-Dahs came to play at our
I remember,
school.
I hear those stories of from that generation, because I was only a baby then, but I remember, I hear those stories a lot. I hear that's what it was like. They literally could go to the schools. Yeah. Or they'd come to the schools.
They'd come to school. And
they'd never leave that
there were bands in New Zealand that were, in more recent times, have been doing it. I just can't remember who it was off the top of my head now.
Probably Crowded House would have done it.
Very much
100%.
so, yeah. But in answering your question, I felt there was so much great talent here. And just as I grew up, I was interested. When I was in my early days on radio, we didn't have sound like an old man. We did have electricity, and there was running water, and we did have the sewer on. Okay, yeah, right. And we didn't go there in a horse and cart. But I'd get these books because I wanted to know so much about Australian music. I had there was a lady called Lillian Roxon. She used to write books about, and you'd turn the page, and here's a bit about the Doors, and I go, yeah, but where's the Masters Apprentices? Yeah, we're missing something here, and I'm just fortunate throughout the years I got to meet those people just because of the era and where I was and stuff that happened. So I always felt we had great talent here, and it wasn't getting the airing that it wanted. But at the same time, and I mentioned this earlier, and people may poo-poo this, but radio is not the marketing department of your song. If you sit back and go, woe is me, radio's not playing Australian music, then you're at the wrong end of the game. Radio may not be playing it because the content doesn't suit the format. Or today, it's the big 3 or 4 record labels that dictate, and I mean that in a nice way, what's getting played. That's right. So you need to be at community radio now. You have to be talking to the community radio stations. You need to be talking to the Triple Js and those people. You need to be looking at grants that are now available either at the state level, the federal government level. Some people, I won't mention him just in case he doesn't want me to, but a guy you and I know has a 2-year grant to help take his music overseas. I've just come back from Nashville and talking to people there on his behalf. So look for those opportunities, because it's surprising how well we are accepted, but you've got to get out there and beat the boards and open the doors yourself. Yeah, that's right. Life's not going to come to you. No one's going to come to your house and say, oh, hi, Dave, I hear you've written a song. Could we just come in and talk to you about it? Because those salespeople don't exist.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I always felt we had that ability. I liked the gritty, what I call the grittiness of the Melbourne scene. You know, we had bands like the Throb and, you know, Easy Beats, Masters at that end, and of course it was more surf orientated here in New South Wales. So places like DY and Cronulla, the surf clubs is where you went to see music.
Yeah, that's right.
In Melbourne it was pubs because there's no great surf there. So music gravitated. Then you look at someone like Jimmy Barnes, who comes from overseas, goes to Elizabeth in South Australia, peeks in and sees a couple of huge bands playing and goes, that's me.
That's me, yeah.
So, again, long story short, we have the talent.
Yeah, that's right.
But you need the support. Someone's got to do it. It's not just me. You've got to have the creativity as well.
Yeah. And so let's go on to your later years now. Like you've got into, so you've gone through radio, you've worked at the high end and helped steer the direction of Australian content, because there's a lot of the Aussie artists who would have you to thank for their first kind of introduction to that world. What's the landscape look like now? It's AIM, is it?
Australian Institute of Music.
Yeah.
It's been around for over 50 years. I'll call it a private university, but all universities in Australia have to abide by TEXA, which is the Total Education Quality System Association of Australia, which means that if you do a degree with us, it's recognised at any other university in Australia and pretty much throughout the world.
Yeah, good.
We're different in as much as people like myself, who are your lecturers, have been in the industry and most likely still are. I would say 90% of our lecturing team are still playing gigs.
Right.
You know, guys like Ken Francis and so on. These are people who played Soup Plus, that played the Down Under bars, that played and still continue to do some session work. And I'm just talking because we have two sections here. We have the performance part, and then we have the management side. The way in which the curriculum works over 2.5 years constantly come together. Okay, and that's done purposely. So we're not just something like your performance department where you just go to the con and learn how to play a guitar. Okay, we're also not just a management university where you just learn theory. We bring the two together. So that's my role. I think I'm uniquely qualified, along with everyone else who works with us, to be in that area. We have songwriter lecturers. We have people who are grand piano players. We've had alumni now who started out just when they left playing Westfield Shopping Town on a Saturday morning, 2 of them on a guitar, receiving $70, to now becoming the musical production guy for Hamilton.
Wow.
Touring with the 10 Tenors and so on. And it's the Institute is just recognised in Australia as being able to produce people who leave with a very sound understanding of the industry.
Yeah, that's great.
Not just a specialist area of the industry, but the industry as a whole.
What it is. Well, that's great. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me. And we could talk all day, and we often do.
And I do.
That's all good. But for those who are looking to meet the wonderful Dave Rogerson, you can go and apply. If you've left school, I always encourage my students when they get to year 10, year 11 or 12, they've done HSC music, they don't know what to do yet. I say, look up AIM. And it's got a great name. 3 of our 10 staff have been graduated from AIM.
Wow.
So they've gone out, and I know they talk about diverse income streams.
And we're in Sydney and Melbourne. I should probably just add a quick, And the 2 campuses often meet online and so on.
Good,
so
good.
Yeah, you do get a chance.
As you know, when they talk about diversity and income stream, being a musician, like I've got the music
absolutely.
school, got the performing career. You've got that's probably that's the 101 lecture.
Yeah,
for the first week.
And your garage isn't home, by the way.
Yeah, exactly right. Get out there.
Man, that was good.
Thanks so much, mate.
And I've got to say thank you also for doing what you do with my students.
That's all right, mate.
You encourage them. You've helped us with a lot of fundraising and little activities we've been doing. So thank you.
Yeah, I love that relationship with this. It's because a lot of the kids are lost. They're really just there's not enough sort of frameworks for them, and that's
Yeah.
all we're there.
And music speaks all languages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Try and provide a framework for them, and the rest is up to them.
Okay.
See you,
ya.
mate.
Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave.